Guess who's back? Back again. Mikey's back. Tell a friend. Hey everybody, here with another video for you guys today. And today we're going to be doing something a little unique on my channel. And that is I am going to tell you my long history with Ghostbusters leading up to Ghostbusters Afterlife, which I will be seeing in theaters tomorrow. But before I go any further, let me just say, if you like this video, any other videos on my channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll be seeing you guys after the intro coming in now. Let me just start this video by saying that you will be seeing gameplay footage in the background of this video from Ghostbusters The Video Game, and the reason why I'm putting this on there is because my very first YouTube videos were actually of Ghostbusters The Video Game. Back in 2010, I actually uploaded Ghostbusters The Video Game, Ghostbusters 3, because at the time that's essentially what the video game was Ghostbusters 3, and that was my actual introduction to YouTube. So that is another reason why Ghostbusters is important to me, you know, throughout the course of my life. It actually is what kick-started my YouTube channel to begin with. Now I'm going to start with my first memory of Ghostbusters. I don't recall or not if I actually saw the original film in the theaters or not. I was quite young, but having said that, you know, my parents very well could have went to the theater and saw it and had taken me with them, but I don't remember. But the first thing I do remember is we rented it from the local video store once it was on VHS, obviously, and I watched it one Saturday morning. I got up early, you know, like kids do, and I watched it all the way through, and then I rewound it and went back to the Hotel Sedgwick scene, you know, starting with "You Got One," so I'd start there and watch it all the way to the end. And I did that quite a few times in a row, as many times as until, you know, one of my parents came and stopped me, probably. And so that's really my first Ghostbusters memory. But I just loved it so much. Like it was like the greatest thing I'd ever seen, because it wasn't just a cartoon, because, you know, up to that point in my life, all I watched was cartoons and stuff like that, or at least, you know, Muppets or whatever. So it was always very geared towards children. Where Ghostbusters, it wasn't geared toward children, it was geared towards adults, but I still enjoyed the heck out of it. And so I really latched onto it hard. And so my first memory of the franchise is of the first movie, and that is something that is, you know, really attaches me to the franchise even more, because my ties are actually with the first film as opposed to anything that's come after it. And now let's talk about the real Ghostbusters. And the real Ghostbusters, it came shortly after, but I remember when the real Ghostbusters started showing up on television, and that was my jam. I was all about that show. It was around the same time, I remember, I think I was in kindergarten. I got, for my birthday that year, I got Ray Stantz, the original Kenner Ecto-1. And the real Ghostbusters is what really kicked off the toy craze with the franchise. There was never really any movie-related action figures or toys until much later, not during the franchise's original popularity, honestly. And so everything toy related was always very much geared towards the real Ghostbusters. And so both of those will always have a special place in my heart as well, because it wasn't the only animated cartoon that I loved. Obviously, there was plenty others from the time. I could go through a list to name some of them. Thundercats, GI Joe. They stand out probably above the rest. But yeah, the real Ghostbusters was just an amazing cartoon, and it still stands up well today. Some of the episodes that are my personal favorite are the Boogeyman and When Halloween Was Forever. Basically, and Collect Call of Cthulhu is another one. But basically, the first 2 seasons of that show are absolutely some of the best animated programming that's been made to date, in my opinion. Now, starting with season 3, they kind of started to mix it up a little bit. They changed Janine's voice out, and there was new voice actors for Peter Venkman as well. And it was still good, though. The show was still good, and it was really solid for the next 2 or 3 more seasons. And had a really nice run going, and it was definitely a Saturday morning staple for many kids in the late 80s. There, it was quite a remarkable time for the franchise. And then that leads me to Ghostbusters 2. And now Ghostbusters 2 will always have a special place in my heart. I was thinking about it, and I can recall seeing other movies in the theaters before I saw Ghostbusters 2 in the theaters, obviously, but they were films like Disney animated stuff, things of that nature that came out at the time. Ghostbusters 2 is the first grown-up movie that I can recall seeing in the theaters. There might have been others, but I can't remember them. But I definitely remember going to see Ghostbusters 2, and for me and for all my friends of the time, there wasn't a bigger thing that we were interested in, that or cooler thing going on at the time than Ghostbusters 2. It really was the creme de la creme of late 80s pop culture stuff, the lead up to that movie. And as for the movie itself, it's not as good as the first one, no. And I think that's where a bulk of the criticism lies in it. Because, let's be honest, the first film is an absolute masterpiece. It's one of those once-in-a-generation kind of films. Anytime you try to do a sequel that's coming off of such a high that is the first movie, you're going to feel the come down. And I think that's a lot of where the criticism tends to lie with that movie, but obviously it's not the only one. Another major criticism is that it does follow the same beats as the first movie, and the first movie tends to do those same beats better. And by beats, what I mean is, you have the introductory scare scene, you have Peter and Dana early in the movie scene. You have the first catching of the ghost scene. You have the montage scene, and then you start building up towards the final climax. Meeting the mayor. It's very mirrors the first film quite extensively, and so and that is a valid criticism of it. And I think that's the main reason why you could never say it is better than the first movie. As with Home Alone versus Home Alone 2, I love Home Alone 2, and some parts of it I think are funnier than the first movie. But you can't say that it's better than the first one, because the first one did all those things first, and the first one did them all a little bit more magically. And the same thing applies here to Ghostbusters. But as for what's in the story itself, Bill Murray's levied a lot of criticism at it, and a lot of his criticism is valid. It was because the movie that we ended up seeing is not exactly what was on script that he signed on to do. Basically, once the special effects team and got a hold of it, and they came up with all these ideas, like the Statue of Liberty, I believe that might not have been in the original script. And they took things over so over the top that Bill was very vocal in his displeasure of it, and it rang true for why he was very reluctant to come back to the series, ever since. And so when you add all those things up, that's where a lot of the Ghostbusters 2 isn't so good kind of talk that you hear on the internet and whatnot. But having said that, I think for what it is, it's actually a very good movie. I find it to be very funny, far more entertaining than I think people give it credit for, and very quotable. Almost as quotable as the first movie. Maybe not quite as much, but I find myself repeating quotes from the movie all the time. So it's and Bill Murray's very good in it. Maybe not as good as in the first one, but he still brings a very good Dr. Peter Venkman in that movie. And all the cast is very much still on top of their game. And so when you have all the magic of the first one, doing it again and still on top of their game, you're going to end up with a quality movie. And I think that Ghostbusters 2 is quality, but if the first movie is a 10 out of 10, I would say Ghostbusters 2 is probably around a 7.5 out of 10, but that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It just means that it's not an all-time classic. And now I'm going to go back to the real Ghostbusters, because it's important to note when we're talking about the franchise's history and the ride that I've been on as a fan with the franchise, coming off of Ghostbusters 2 and then going back to the real Ghostbusters as the main source of the franchise's popularity. This is really where the franchise started to nosedive, and it happened really quickly after the release of Ghostbusters 2, unfortunately. And the series just took a completely different turn. Slimer became like the main star. They brought in Louis Tully as a character, which you would think would be a good thing, but they brought him in so late into the game, and Dana Barrett never was a character on the show, so it was like, but all of a sudden Louis shows up, and they just kind of shoehorned him in, and the comedy and goofiness went really over the top, and it became more similar to like a Garfield cartoon at the time than what the real Ghostbusters was before Ghostbusters 2 came out. And as a fan, I still watched it and I still enjoyed it, but it definitely was not what it used to be. Even as a kid, I was like, oh man, and at the time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was really on the rise and was stealing a lot of the thunder from Ghostbusters amongst, the kids my age that I grew up with. And when I compared where Ninja Turtles cartoon was at the time to where the Ghostbusters cartoon was at the time, even me myself as a huge Ghostbuster fan, if you would have asked me at that time, I was like, yeah, I like Ninja Turtles better. A lot of it was due to the decline of the real Ghostbusters cartoon, in my opinion. If they would have kept that cartoon strong and running, the franchise could have been a lot stronger throughout the decade of the 90s than it ended up being. And the next step on the journey is the eventual death, or what really felt like the death of the franchise, and that was right after the real Ghostbusters cartoon was canceled. Ghostbusters was literally over at that point. I mean, people still liked it, and it was still on television, and people still enjoyed it, and it was still around. But it was definitely the old hat or the old pair of shoes in your closet at that point. It wasn't the cool, fun thing that people were interested in or into anymore. And I definitely fell into that category as well. But a lot of it was I was also becoming older, and I was in high school and stuff. And I remember when the Extreme Ghostbusters cartoon came on, and I had no idea it even existed. I remember I was getting up for school in the morning. It was I was probably in maybe 10th grade or 11th grade, somewhere around there. And I like to turn on television in the morning when I was getting ready. I just happened to turn that on, and lo and behold, it was the Extreme Ghostbusters, brand new Ghostbusters cartoon. And I wasn't able to watch much of it because I had to go to school, obviously. But I remember years later, I ended up searching it out and watching it after the fact, because I believe it ran for 2 seasons, or maybe not even 2. Maybe it was just a one and done. And it's not bad. And there's definitely some things of it that were, story-wise, it was a direct continuation of the real Ghostbusters cartoon, and it has a lot of parallels with what we're going to see in Ghostbusters Afterlife. And so as a Ghostbusters fan, it's definitely something that's not bad to go back and check out. You might be interested in it. But yeah, at the time it didn't do much for me. What I was interested in, though, was around the same time we started to hear talk of a possible Ghostbusters 3, and maybe the Extreme Ghostbusters was kind of like testing the waters at the time to see where the franchise was with people. But like I said, from about 91 to all the way through the rest of the 90s, Ghostbusters was just such a dead and dormant franchise at that time. The talk of a possibility of a third film was always something that I was interested in. Honestly, as soon as the credits rolled on Ghostbusters 2, I was ready for Ghostbusters 3 myself. The actual talk started in 97, because up until that point, even Dan Aykroyd was like, no, I'm doing other things. Like, nobody was interested in a Ghostbusters 3 before 1997. So when the talk started happening in 1997, I got all excited, and I'm like, all right, Ghostbusters 3 is finally happening. I'm ready. And then silence. And the silence rang true all the way up until 2009, when Ghostbusters the Video Game was released. And when I think back on Ghostbusters the Video Game, it was such a huge game for me, because that was Ghostbusters 3. Everybody was saying, whether it was Dan Aykroyd or Harold Ramis, that this is as close as you're going to get to Ghostbusters 3. And so it very much had that excitement as a Ghostbusters fan that, all right, we're finally getting the boys back together, and we're getting a new story written by Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd. Yes, it's not going to be what we wanted. We wanted another movie, but hey, Bill's involved, the gang's back together, and hey, it's a game and we're going to be able to play it. So as a fans, we really latched on hard to it. So much so that I'm obviously big time into video games and gaming in general. When I look back, on my history with gaming, certain games you call as, console sellers, because a new system might come out or something, and you're still unsure whether you're going to get it. You're still hanging on to the one that you have, and that's kind of where I was at that time. I don't believe I had the Xbox 360 yet. I still only had the original Xbox, but I still was very much following the news, because I knew I was going to buy a new system at some point. But when news came that Ghostbusters the Video Game was coming out and all the original people were involved in it, I was like, sold. I have to get an Xbox 360. But anyways, that game was very much a system seller for me anyways. And then, as I said earlier in the video, the start of my YouTube career started with Ghostbusters the Video Game. And unfortunately, I had to delete it from my channel. Well, I didn't have to delete it, but I did some other videos, which is a topic for another video entirely. And they got a bunch of copyright strikes on them, and one of them got straight up deleted off my channel. And in the best interest of my channel at that time, because these were all old videos that I did very early on in my YouTube career, so I was just like, man, anything that I don't have the ownership of on my channel, I need to just delete. And at that time, because the Ghostbusters the videos had all the music in it from the soundtracks, so I wasn't able to monetize any of those videos anyways. And so I just straight up deleted them as well. I mean, I have the copies on my computer, the original one, But yeah, I deleted it off of YouTube, and so that's why part of the reason I wanted to make this video is because it means so much to me, and part of me wants to put this back on YouTube, or maybe even redo it, but I don't know. We'll see if the demand's there, but just know that Ghostbusters the Video Game is the original start of Mikey J Productions. But Ghostbusters the Video Game was so popular amongst the fans that it actually started to generate enough interest within the franchise that sequel talk started up once again. And this time, as a fan, I thought, all right, they're finally, it's got to happen. But Bill was so reluctant to sign back on. There's stories, that you can read where he just straight up puts the scripts in the trash or puts them through the paper shredder or stuff like that because he just thought that they were straight garbage and didn't want any part of those movies. And Bill's reluctance is honestly the number one reason that we never got a Ghostbusters 3. He was just so adamant against doing it. And as a fan, I loved him because he's Dr. Peter Venkman and that's my favorite Ghostbuster. But at the same time, I'd be, oh, Bill, what are you doing? Just give us one more movie. And why do you not want to do it? Why are you so against it? Come on, we love you, just do it. And he just was so against it, and I never quite understood why he was so against it. But now that Afterlife is coming out, I think I have a better understanding of it. Is it just they just weren't there story wise? The scripts weren't there. Even the stuff that ended up being in Ghostbusters the Video Game, because a lot of the stuff that was originally from different scripts throughout Ghostbusters 3's pre-production did end up within the video game. The video game itself would not have worked as a movie whatsoever. And and I say that as someone that made the YouTube videos trying to make it into a movie, because it's just eventually something turns into level after level after level, and movies just don't work that way. Movies flow cinematically. And they don't just, here's a level and then, oh, now we got a new level and there's a boss. And yeah, it doesn't work in the context of a film. It definitely introduced some aspects that, would cause some problems within the official film canon if you tried to include it into the film canon. Such as Dana Barrett, where is she within that movie? And is she and Peter together? Because if they are, then he's just hitting on another woman. That's not really cool. And if they broke up, then why did they break up? And then it seems like they're probably going to be getting back together in Afterlife. So it's just what do you do with all that? And that's just with the Peter and Dana stuff. Don't even get me started on the Ivo Shandor stuff and Gozer, because both characters are in the video game, and if they're also in the new movie, they you can't let that contradict each other. So again, it creates just some issues that you're best left without. I can't do this video without at least mentioning the 2016 movie. But this is pretty much the low point for me as a fan. It felt like having to break up with somebody you love, almost. Not as bad as that, but definitely something you're just I love you, but you're going down a road I can't follow. And it had nothing to do with the fact that they were girls, that they gender swapped it out. I watched it. I tried to give it a chance, even though I was not on board with it. It just, everything about it felt wrong and off. And yeah, I broke up with Ghostbusters at that point. And it was hard for me. It was hard. I never thought something that gave me so much joy was going to basically smack you in the face. And just well, we don't really care what you guys, the fans, want. This is the movie we're going to make. And I was just kind of ouch. Alright. So when news of Afterlife was released, I was kind of speechless about it. Because much like the 2016 movie was breaking up with someone that you love, the Afterlife was them coming back again. And And again, I'm saying this the day before I see the movie. I am seeing the movie tomorrow for its premiere, so that's why I wanted to do this video today, because this is all my feelings as a fan of the franchise leading up to a movie that I know I'm going to love. I know it's going to be very rewarding for me as a fan, and I'm very emotional about it. I mean, I'm essentially one of the original Ghostbusters fans, and I'm getting ready to take my 6-year-old son and my 17-year-old daughters and my wife to go see a new Ghostbusters movie. When the last time I went to go see a Ghostbusters movie, I was in the theaters. I was a kid. It's, one of them full circle kind of moments. Part of my reason for wanting to do this video is because this is the last time that I'm going to be an old school Ghostbusters fan that feels this particular way about the franchise. Because after tomorrow, Ghostbusters Afterlife comes out and everything changes. Where the franchise goes from here, I don't know. I'm excited about it. But just to put a little thing on Ghostbusters 2 for a hot second, I do believe I'm going to like Ghostbusters Afterlife better than Ghostbusters 2, and I'm excited about that. I know I'm not going to like it as much as the original movie. I don't think nothing that they could ever do will top that movie. But just for the fact that I do believe I'm going to like Afterlife better than Ghostbusters 2 gets me really excited. But having said that, I don't believe that anything they do after Ghostbusters Afterlife, even if it's really good unto itself, I will feel is better than Ghostbusters 2. So for me, Ghostbusters 2 is probably always going to be the third best film in the series. But anyways, that is my video for you guys today. Thanks so much for listening to my ramblings as I go on and on about my story as a Ghostbusters fan. Thanks so much for watching. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.
Across the street!
We eat gods for breakfast?
Too much, you think?
No, I liked it.
I've got you.
Get me down from here. Please,
New guy.
I'm begging you, let
You're
me down. This is not the last you will see of me.
The Ghostbusters. Hey, fellas. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? Where is here?
You were the victim of a trans-dimensional possession, Your Honor.
What's that mean?
An evil ghost was walking around in your body for a few months.
Whoa. Did anyone notice? Well, how's my approval rating?
Well, you got reelected.
By the way, you're a descendant of Shandor.
Yeah, I kinda got that. What?